They say money doesn't change you, it exposes who you really are. For Donald Reeves, one of America's youngest billionaires, that truth was about to unfold in a way he could never predict. At 35, Donald was everything the headlines loved to write about. Founder of Reeves Tech, the man who turned smart homes into an empire. A single father raising his 7-year-old son, Mason. And a man who'd learned the hard way that love built on comfort isn't the same as love built on truth. 3 years ago, when his company faced a brief scandal, his wife didn't stay to fight with him. She stayed long enough to claim half his wealth before walking away. That betrayal didn't just leave him single. It left him skeptical. Since then, he'd met plenty of women. Some charming, some kind, all convincing. But in the back of his mind, one question never left. Would anyone still care about Donald Reeves if he wasn't rich? That thought haunted him through every handshake, every dinner, every "I care about you" that followed his fame. Until one morning, staring at the glass walls of his penthouse, he decided to find out. If love can't survive a storm, he murmured, then maybe it was never love at all. He turned from the skyline and called his lawyer. The plan that had been brewing in his mind for months was finally taking form, drastic, calculated, and entirely his. Within days, the papers were ready. A carefully designed illusion of ruin. To the world, Reeves Tech was crumbling. The company's stock was suspended, his accounts frozen, and a leaked document painted him as a man on the edge of bankruptcy. But behind closed doors, his real fortune sat untouched, hidden under a private foundation's name. This wasn't about money. It was about people. Donald wanted to know who would stand beside him when the headlines turned ugly. And unknowingly, 3 women would soon become the center of his quiet experiment. Vanessa, the glamorous influencer who'd called him her hero on national television. Rachel, the business consultant who claimed she could rebuild his empire. And Grace, his son's nanny. Quiet, private, almost invisible in his world of luxury. Each had shown him care in different ways. Each said they believed in him. But which one actually meant it? He planned everything meticulously. The media would get the story first. Then he'd watch how each woman reacted before letting them know the truth. On a Thursday morning, it began. The headline spread across every finance page in America. Reeves Tech collapses. Billionaire Donald Reeves declares bankruptcy. By noon, his phone lit up with calls, texts, and messages. Most were from reporters and friends wanting statements. But 3 names caught his eye. Vanessa, Rachel, Grace. He didn't open them yet. He just stared, curious which message would sound like concern, and which would sound like opportunity. Vanessa's text came first. "Hey babe, saw the news. Hope it's not as bad as they say. Call me when you can." Red heart. Simple, polite, but distant. It felt more like someone checking in for the sake of appearances. Rachel's message followed. "Heard about what happened. I have an idea that could help fix this. We should talk tonight." Timing is everything. Typical Rachel. Always thinking in deals. He smiled faintly, not in judgment but recognition. He'd built an empire by understanding people, and this time he was turning that skill on his own life. Grace's message came hours later. Short, direct. "Are you okay?" Mason asked why the housekeeper was crying. "Should I tell him something?" Donald didn't know what to make of that. No emojis. No promises. Just real. For the first time in a long while, he felt unsure. Not of his plan, but of how it was already beginning to change him. That night, he sat in the dark, replaying old memories. Parties, boardrooms, handshakes that ended in betrayal. He wondered if he'd gone too far. If pretending to lose everything might cost him more than he could afford emotionally. But then, Mason's laughter echoed from the hallway. snapping him out of his thoughts. The boy ran in, holding a toy robot. "Dad, when we're poor, can we still go to the park?" Donald froze, then laughed softly. "Of course, buddy. The park doesn't charge billionaires." Mason smiled and ran off again. But the question lingered. When we're poor. He didn't realize how deeply this act would ripple through their lives. The next day, the media moved fast. Cameras flashed outside his gate. Investors demanded answers, and rumors spiraled out of control. By evening, he'd received a dozen emails offering partnerships to rebuild Reeves Tech, each one filled with conditions that made him sick. By day 3, 2 of the women called him. Vanessa, her voice laced with concern and confusion. Rachel, businesslike and calculating. And Grace? Nothing. No call. No message. No sign she even cared. Just silence. But Donald noticed something strange. Each evening when he came home, dinner was on the table. Mason's homework was done. The house was calm. It wasn't until the 4th night that he realized what was missing. The awkward sympathy. The tiptoeing. The pity. Grace was treating him the same way she always had. Like a normal man. Like nothing had changed. For a split second, Donald almost broke character. He almost told her the truth. But he stopped himself. The test wasn't over. The game had just begun. He poured himself a drink and stared at the city lights outside. Below him, cameras still flashed. Reporters shouted questions. But up here, in the quiet of his home, the real story was just starting to unfold. "Let's see," he whispered to himself. "Who's still here when the gold fades?" He didn't know it yet, but by the time this test was over, the person he trusted least would become the one he could never forget. And the woman he'd overlooked the most would shock him more than anyone else ever had. 3 days after the headlines hit, the mansion that once buzzed with guests now echoed with silence. Even the staff walked more softly, as if money itself had been keeping the walls alive. Donald watched from the second-floor balcony as a moving van pulled up. It wasn't his, but someone else's. Vanessa's. The influencer arrived in oversized sunglasses and a red tracksuit that screamed casual wealth. She waved dramatically at the guards, ignoring the cameras flashing nearby. "Babe," she called out. "We need to talk." Donald met her at the entrance, keeping his expression calm. Vanessa walked in, her perfume thick enough to remind him of their last weekend in Malibu. Expensive, intoxicating, and temporary. "I just came from an interview," she started, setting down her designer bag. "People keep asking if we're still together." I told them yes, of course. "But," she hesitated, her tone softening. "You should clear the air, Dawn. Maybe post something reassuring? A statement. You don't want to lose public trust." Donald studied her carefully. Even now, she spoke in terms of followers and image. "What if the news is true?" he asked. "What if Reeves Tech really went under?" Vanessa laughed nervously. "Don't say that. You'll figure it out, you always do." She reached for his hand. "Just promise me we'll be okay, all right?" Her eyes searched his for something, stability maybe, or confirmation that the lifestyle she adored wasn't about to vanish. Donald gave her a faint smile. "We'll see." By the time she left that evening, her tone had changed. Her goodbyes were polite, not loving. And when the reporters shouted her name at the gate, she smiled at them like a movie star leaving a premiere. Donald didn't need to check his phone to know she'd already posted a cryptic story. Sometimes love needs space. Broken heart sparkles. He poured himself another drink and whispered, "Space or safety?" The next morning, Rachel arrived. Unlike Vanessa, she didn't bother with sympathy. She came with a laptop, a proposal, and a plan to restructure Reeves Tech's brand. "Listen," she said briskly, spreading documents across his coffee table. If we position this crisis as a strategic pivot, investors will come crawling back. I've already reached out to 2 of them anonymously. Donald raised a brow. Anonymous outreach? You're trying to fix what everyone thinks is bankrupt. Rachel leaned forward. I'm trying to fix you, Don. You've always been the product. The man who built something out of nothing. That story still sells, even if the company doesn't. Her confidence was magnetic. She spoke like someone who believed in control, not comfort. And for a moment, Donald felt the pull of old temptation, the thrill of ambition. But then she said something that made him pause. Of course, she added. We'll need to move assets under my name temporarily, just till the market stabilizes. Investors trust me more right now. Donald blinked slowly, hiding the sharp twist in his gut. He smiled politely, nodded, and told her he'd think about it. As she left, his smile faded. Trust her? He muttered. Not a chance. By day 5, only one woman hadn't tried to fix his life. Grace. She still showed up every morning, helping Mason with breakfast, walking him to school, humming quietly in the kitchen. No questions, no pity, no mention of money. That evening, when Donald came home, he found her outside by the garden. The sun was setting, golden light spilling across the grass, catching in her hair. He stood by the doorway, watching her trim Mason's small tomato plants. He didn't know why it bothered him that she seemed peaceful. Maybe because peace was something he'd forgotten how to feel. You're quiet lately, he said. Grace looked up. You're pretending everything's fine, so I figured silence matches the mood. He frowned. You think I'm pretending? She shrugged. You've got the look of a man carrying 2 versions of himself. One the world sees, and one he doesn't trust anyone with. Donald felt something tighten in his chest. No one had ever described him that accurately. You don't believe the rumors? He asked finally. Grace smiled faintly. I don't follow rumors. I follow people's eyes. Yours don't look like a man who lost everything. Just someone trying to see who will stay. He froze. For the first time, it felt like she knew. Why are you still here? He asked quietly. Grace turned back to the plants. Mason still needs dinner. You still need someone to tell you when you're being stubborn. And I'm still being paid. At least till the house sells, right? There was humor in her tone, but something deeper too. Something unspoken. That night, Donald couldn't sleep. He kept replaying her words. Not because they exposed him, but because they made him feel seen, and that was far more dangerous. A week later, his test reached its peak. Vanessa announced a temporary break online. Rachel pressed harder for access to his accounts. And Grace quietly packed Mason's lunch for school, humming an old tune that made the house feel alive again. But something unexpected happened that morning. Donald received a call from his lawyer. A hacker had broken into one of the fake bankruptcy files. If the leak spread, the truth, his real fortune, could come out. The entire plan could collapse. He hung up and rubbed his temples. He needed to act fast. Then, from the corner of the hallway, he heard Mason's voice. Miss Grace said you're going to be fine, Dad. She said rich or not, you're still my hero. Donald turned slowly. Grace stood behind the boy, her gaze calm but firm. And for a moment he wondered, was she protecting his secret? Or had she known it all along? He didn't ask. Not yet. Because sometimes, the truth isn't what ruins a test. It's what makes you afraid to finish it. That night, rain poured across the city. Donald stood by his window, phone buzzing with messages. Vanessa, we need to talk. Things are complicated. Rachel, final offer. I can get investors by morning. Need account details now. Grace, nothing. But at exactly 10:47 p.m., the power went out. Darkness swallowed the mansion, and from somewhere downstairs he heard a sound. Faint, deliberate. A door creaking open. Footsteps. Donald grabbed a flashlight and moved quietly down the staircase. The sound came from his office, the one that held his fake bankruptcy files. He opened the door. Someone was inside. Thunder rumbled across the sky like an angry drum. Rain streaked down the tall windows of the mansion as Donald descended the staircase, his flashlight cutting through the dark. Every creak of the old wooden floor echoed louder than it should have. He tightened his grip on the light and moved toward his office, the only room in the house that wasn't supposed to have visitors. When he reached the door, he noticed it was slightly ajar. A soft glow flickered inside. The desk lamp. He pushed the door open slowly, and there, standing by his desk, was Grace. Her hair was damp from the storm, her hands resting lightly on a folder. That folder. The one containing all the details of his fake bankruptcy. Donald froze. Grace. His voice was low, measured. What are you doing here? She didn't jump or flinch. Instead, she turned slowly, her expression unreadable in the dim light. I heard something, she said quietly. The wind, maybe. I came to close the window and saw this. Her eyes flicked toward the folder. I wasn't snooping, I swear. Donald stepped forward, every muscle tense. Then why open it? She hesitated, then sighed. Because Mason said something earlier. He told me you'd get your company back soon. It didn't sound like something a child made up. Donald's chest tightened. So you decided to investigate? Grace shook her head. No, I decided to understand. The silence stretched. The rain outside seemed to fill the entire room. Finally, Donald exhaled and sank into the chair behind the desk. He looked tired, not just from the act, but from the weight of pretending for so long. So, he murmured, you know? Grace crossed her arms gently. I know this bankruptcy isn't real. I know you've been watching how people react. But I don't know why. Donald leaned back, the leather creaking softly beneath him. Because trust is easy when you're rich, he said. Everyone loves a winner. But lose your fortune, and you see what's real. Grace studied him for a long moment. And what have you seen so far? He gave a bitter laugh. 2 women who ran their own tests on me. And what about the third? She asked quietly. Donald met her eyes, still deciding. For a moment, neither spoke. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating her face. Calm, curious, almost sad. She stepped closer. You know, Donald, I used to work for a family like yours once. Rich, famous, flawless on the outside. But every night they'd fight about money and loyalty. Like love had a price tag. He glanced up. And what did you learn? That people don't change when they lose money, she said softly. They just become easier to read. He smiled faintly. And what do you read in me? Grace tilted her head. A man who doesn't trust easily. Maybe because he's never had to. Her words hit deeper than she knew. Donald wanted to say something, to defend himself. But his phone buzzed, cutting through the tension. He checked the screen. Rachel. He hesitated, then answered. Don, we have a problem. Her voice came sharp and fast. The leak's spreading. Someone accessed files you sent last week. Investors are panicking. You need to get ahead of this now. Donald's eyes flicked toward Grace. I didn't send anything. What? Rachel's voice rose. Then who did? He froze. A chill ran through him. He turned slowly toward Grace, but she looked just as startled. Lightning flashed again, and for a split second, he saw her reflection in the window. Pale, confused, not guilty. Then his laptop beeped. A new message appeared on the screen. No sender. Just a single line of text. You can't fake a fall without someone wanting to push. The file folder on the desk popped open. All the forged documents, now corrupted, scrambled, useless. Someone had hacked him. Grace stepped back, eyes wide. Donald, what is this? He didn't answer. He was already typing, fingers flying across the keyboard, trying to trace the breach. But the system was too far gone. Whoever did it had buried their trail. Then, almost as suddenly as it started, everything went dark. The power cut again, this time not because of the storm. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the room in red. Grace whispered, "This isn't just a leak, is it?" Donald's voice was low, controlled. "No, someone's in the system, and they know the truth." He turned to her. "Did you touch anything?" "No," she said firmly. "I just saw the folder." Before he could respond, the door creaked again. Mason stood there, half asleep, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. "Dad?" he mumbled. The lights went off. Donald's voice softened instantly. "It's okay, buddy. Go back to bed." But Grace knelt beside the boy and whispered, "I'll stay with him." Donald nodded, grateful and wary, because now, more than ever, he didn't know who to trust. When they left, he sat alone in the red light, listening to the rain hit the windows. He thought the test would expose others. He never expected it to turn on him. And as he stared at the corrupted files, he saw something strange. A new document loading in real time. A file named Truth MP4. He clicked it. The screen came alive with footage, surveillance from his own mansion. The video showed Vanessa meeting with Rachel at a cafe days before the bankruptcy. Both of them laughing, whispering, exchanging envelopes. Donald's heart pounded. They knew. He leaned closer as the video continued, until the camera shifted, revealing a third person sitting behind them, partially hidden. Grace. He froze. It didn't make sense. The date stamp showed it was a week before she started working as Mason's nanny. Had she known them already? Was this all part of something bigger? He replayed the clip, zoomed in. Yes, it was definitely her. Same hair, same face, same calm expression. Donald's mind raced. Everything, the kindness, the insight, the perfect timing, was it all calculated? He didn't sleep that night. Not because he was scared of losing his fortune, but because for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure who had been testing whom. By morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight poured into the living room, almost mocking how normal everything looked. Mason laughed at cartoons. Grace made pancakes, humming softly like nothing had happened. Donald sat at the table, studying her quietly. She noticed. "You're staring." He forced a smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how much people can hide behind a smile." Grace didn't react right away. Then, slowly, she placed the spatula down and turned toward him. "Then I guess you and I have something in common," she said. Their eyes met. Calm on the surface, storm underneath. Neither spoke again. But the air between them carried every question they were too afraid to ask. That night, Donald opened his safe and pulled out the last untouched drive. The backup containing all the real files, the truth about his fortune. He looked at it, then at Mason's photo on his desk. This test had gone too far. He needed to end it. But when he opened his laptop to transfer the data, the screen flickered again, and a new message appeared. "You wanted to test loyalty, Donald. Now it's your turn to prove yours." The message vanished, and below it one new folder appeared. Grace_confidential. He stared at the name, pulse pounding. Then slowly he clicked. The folder opened with a soft click, the screen glowing pale against Donald's face. He leaned in, expecting numbers, contracts, maybe an old employment record. But instead, there were pictures. Dozens of them. Grace at different ages in different places. A child standing outside a modest house. A teenager in a scholarship photo. A young woman in a nurse's uniform. And finally, Grace at a charity gala, shaking hands with his wife, Evelyn Reeves. Donald's breath caught. His wife, the woman who had left him years ago, living her own life, now appeared in Grace's history. What did Grace have to do with her? He scrolled further. An old email appeared, time-stamped years ago, long before Grace entered his mansion. From Evelyn Reeves. Subject: about the girl I told you. If anything ever happens, promise you'll find her. She deserves a chance at a better life. Her name is Grace Turner. Donald's hand trembled. He whispered her name aloud like it was the first time he truly heard it. Grace Turner. The girl Evelyn had wanted him to help. He sat back, overwhelmed. All this time she'd been here, right under his roof. And he never knew. Morning came cold and bright. Grace moved through the kitchen with her usual quiet rhythm, flipping pancakes as Mason chattered beside her. But Donald's gaze followed her like a shadow. Every motion, every smile. Suddenly, they felt like clues. When Mason left for school, Donald waited until the door clicked shut before speaking. "How long were you going to hide it?" Grace turned, surprised. "Hide what?" He placed his phone on the counter. Her photos, her connection to Evelyn, filled the screen. The color drained from her face. "I was going to tell you," she said softly. "Just not like this." Donald's voice stayed calm, but his eyes were sharp. "You worked for my wife?" "Yes," she whispered. "Before she left, she started a charity in Chicago. That's where we met. She told me one day, you'd need someone real around you and Mason. And you didn't think I deserved to know?" Grace's eyes glistened. "You didn't want to know anyone, Donald. You just wanted loyalty without connection. That's what your test was about, wasn't it?" Her words cut deep because they were true. He turned away, jaw tight. So this was a setup? Some kind of moral experiment? She stepped closer. "No, it was a promise. Evelyn asked me to stay close to you and Mason, to make sure you both had someone real, in case your walls got too high." He froze. The sound of Evelyn's name, spoken gently, felt like a wound reopening. "She said you'd test people someday," Grace continued, tears in her voice. "She said when that day came, I'd have to remind you what trust really looks like." Donald's chest rose and fell. He wanted to be angry, but he couldn't. He saw truth in her trembling hands, in the way she refused to look away. For the first time, he didn't see a test subject. He saw someone who'd been protecting him, even from himself. That night, Donald couldn't escape his thoughts. He went through every message, every move Grace had made since she arrived. She'd never asked for a raise, never crossed boundaries, never once betrayed his confidence. But then another file inside the folder caught his eye. Hidden beneath the photos, a video labeled Day 1. He clicked it. Grainy footage filled the screen. Grace sitting in her small apartment, speaking directly to a camera. "Evelyn told me to take the job. She said Donald won't recognize me. I'm scared, but I owe her everything. If I can help him see the world beyond business again, I'll try. Even if he never knows who I really am." Donald's throat tightened. It wasn't manipulation. It was devotion. He shut the laptop, leaning back in silence. The weight of guilt pressed down, heavy, deserved, inescapable. For years, he judged loyalty through tests, contracts, and controlled losses. But this woman, this nanny, had been loyal without ever needing proof. He wanted to tell her, to thank her, but pride held him back. The next morning, the story broke online. Not about the test, about him. Someone had leaked footage of his fake bankruptcy files. The internet exploded with outrage. Headlines screamed betrayal and manipulation. Reeves' stock plummeted overnight. Vanessa denied involvement. Rachel stayed silent. But the leak traced back to a computer in his own mansion. Donald stared at the report, every nerve on fire. Grace couldn't be her. Could it? He rushed downstairs, calling her name. "Grace!" No answer. He searched the kitchen, the garden, Mason's room, empty. Her bag was gone. So was her car. On the table, a folded note waited beside Mason's breakfast plate. His name written in her neat handwriting. Donald unfolded it with shaking hands. "Donald, I didn't leak your files. But someone was watching everything long before I came here. If you want to protect Mason, meet me where Evelyn and I first worked together, by the lake house. Come alone. Grace." He read it twice, heart pounding. The lake house, his wife's old charity retreat, an hour outside the city. He grabbed his keys and left before reason could stop him. Rain fell again, soft and steady this time. The road to the lake house was empty, lined with trees bending under the wind. As Donald pulled up, headlights cut across the dark water. The lake house stood just as Evelyn had left it. Quiet, elegant, haunted by memory. He stepped out, calling softly, "Grace!" A light flickered inside. He pushed the door open slowly. Grace stood in the middle of the room, holding a flash drive. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried exhaustion. "You came," she said. Donald's voice was firm. "You said Mason's in danger." "Why?" "Because this wasn't just about your test," she replied. "Someone else was using it, watching you. The hack wasn't random." He frowned. "Who?" Before she could answer, a voice echoed from behind. Cold, familiar, cruel. "Me." Donald turned sharply. Standing in the doorway was Rachel. Her smile was sharp as a blade. "Congratulations, Dawn," she said, stepping inside. "You wanted to test loyalty. Turns out you failed your own." Grace stepped in front of him instinctively, the flash drive clutched tight in her hand. Rachel raised a small pistol, eyes glinting. "Now hand it over, darling. The truth is worth more than your fortune ever was." Donald's breath caught. Everything, the leak, the hack, the setup, it all led here. And as thunder rolled across the lake, he realized too late that this was never about who he could trust. It was about who could destroy him first. The storm outside had passed, leaving the lake house wrapped in an eerie silence. Donald stood in the center of the room, his heart pounding, eyes locked on Rachel. Grace, holding the flash drive like a shield, remained calm but tense. Mason's safety hung in the air like a fragile thread. Rachel's pistol gleamed under the dim light. Her smile was sharp, calculated. "You see, Donald," she said, "loyalty is everything in this world, and you wanted to play God, testing everyone around you. I just decided to play along and take control." Donald's jaw tightened. "You've been behind the hack?" "The leaks." Rachel's laugh was soft, chilling. "Of course. Every move you made, every little test, I turned into an opportunity. The world thinks you're bankrupt. Investors panic. Vanessa panics. And you? You're helpless." Grace stepped closer to Donald. "Stay calm," she whispered. Donald's mind raced. He'd spent weeks testing the women around him, only to realize now, the person he underestimated most wasn't Grace. It was Rachel. "Don't underestimate her," Grace continued quietly. "She's dangerous because she's always thinking 3 steps ahead." Rachel's finger tensed on the trigger. "Give me the flash drive," she demanded. "Now." Donald's gaze flicked to Grace, who subtly shook her head. He realized something critical. The drive was the bait. Rachel wanted to control the truth, but she didn't have Mason. His voice was steady. "You want the drive, Rachel, but you'll have to get past her first." Rachel's eyes narrowed. A tense standoff ensued, seconds stretching like hours. Then, without warning, Grace lunged. She knocked Rachel's arm, forcing the gun to clatter onto the floor. Mason's stuffed dinosaur squeaked as he squealed behind a couch. Donald grabbed Rachel's wrist, twisting just enough to hold her in place. "You underestimated us," he said firmly. Rachel glared at him. "You'll regret this." Donald shook his head. "I already regret trusting the wrong people." Grace pressed the flash drive into Donald's hand. "This contains everything, the fake bankruptcy, the surveillance files, even proof of Rachel's manipulations. You can expose her or protect Mason. The choice is yours." Donald took a deep breath, then looked Rachel straight in the eye. "You were right about one thing," he said slowly. "Loyalty matters. And I see now who's loyal and who's not." Rachel's smirk faltered. "You'll never get away with this." Donald pressed a button on the flash drive, transferring the files to his private, secure server. He held up his phone. Investors, law enforcement, and the media all alerted simultaneously. Within minutes, Rachel's schemes were exposed. Her name, connections, and manipulations went public. She was cornered, powerless, and furious. Grace stepped forward, finally allowing herself a small smile. Donald turned to her. "I misjudged you, Grace. You stayed. Not for me, not for money, but for Mason, for Evelyn's trust, and for the right reasons." Grace shook her head. "You don't need to thank me. I just did what was right." Donald glanced at Mason, who ran to him, eyes wide. "You okay, buddy?" he asked, hugging his son tightly. Mason nodded. "Yes." Miss Grace said everything's fine. Donald smiled, relief flooding him. For the first time in weeks, he felt calm. The aftermath was swift. Vanessa quietly faded from the story, posting a vague apology online about being misinformed. Rachel faced charges for her manipulations and was banned from any corporate positions, a public downfall that the media devoured. Donald's reputation recovered quickly, his real fortune intact. But more importantly, he had learned the lesson he had been avoiding for years. Trust cannot be tested through money or power. It must be earned, and sometimes recognized when it's right in front of you. Weeks later, Donald invited Grace to sit beside him on the penthouse balcony, watching the sun rise over the city. "You know," he said quietly, "I thought I was teaching lessons. Turns out, I was the one being tested." Grace looked at him, her amber eyes steady. "Some lessons aren't learned until you risk losing everything." Donald nodded, thinking of Evelyn's wisdom and the journey that had brought them here. Then, smiling faintly, he added, "I don't need a test anymore. I have the truth, and the people who truly matter." Grace returned his smile. Quiet, warm, and unwavering. Mason ran up, holding a toy plane. "Dad, let's go fly it." Donald laughed, lifting him up onto his shoulders. He realized that in life, no fortune, test, or scheme mattered more than loyalty, honesty, and love. And as he watched Grace laugh with Mason, he knew one thing for certain. Some truths are more valuable than billions. Some people are worth more than any fortune. And Grace was priceless.
Subscribe for more echoes.